Hello, good morning. Today we are going to look at some of the greatest papers in Ugandan history, that is 210/1. Very many of you know it as the African Nationalism and the Rise of New States. Now, when we talk about African nationalism, very many times learners fail. Oh, I forgot. Do not forget to subscribe to this page so that you can get more notifications and receive more lessons about African nationalism that will help you enhance your African nationalism knowledge and understand this paper getting an A grade in history. So, African nationalism, one can say, is as old as the African race. So it should be noted that as early as the 13th century, very many nationalists or nationalism broke up. People started getting nationalistic ideas and started rise to fight all forms of colonial tendencies in the social, economic, and political spheres of life. Okay? So people started fighting colonialism that had come and taken away freedom of the African people. So one can define African nationalism as the total rejection of colonial rule and its manifestations in the political, social, and economic spheres of life. That one can define African nationalism that way. However, let's look at other people who defined African nationalism. For example, Professor Semakula Chiwanuka, I quote, a Ugandan writer, defined African nationalism as hostile feelings towards alien rule. Okay, what alien rule did he mean? The colonial rule, anything that is alien, anything that is foreign. He defined nationalism or African nationalism as rejection towards this alien rule. So we can look at other people, for example, in the wise words of Colin Lengum, I quote, he said, nationalism is a political force which promotes ideas of a nation and mobilizes the masses to support the ideas to make them into a reality. So Colin Lengum defined African nationalism in such a manner. Other scholars have also defined African nationalism as awareness on the part of Africans to belong to their nations, expressing loyalty to their nations, having pride, and desiring to free from any colonial manifestations. So, how do you define African nationalism where you are? So I want you to create your own definition, your own peculiar way of defining African nationalism. So colonialism, on the other hand, remember the Africans were fighting colonialism. Colonialism, on the other hand, goes in hand with imperialism. So the revolution to change all this started in Europe, whereby they decided to create a scramble and petition for Africa. So the Africans had to react and fight colonial rule. As we are ending our lesson today, let's look at some of the characteristics of African nationalism. We have looked at African nationalism as the rejection. Remember, the whites came as early as the 13th century, trying to take away our sovereignty as the African people, trying to take away our will as the African people, trying to take away our rule, our independence as the African people. So the Africans had to react. So it is as old as the African race. Once you are born, you become a nationalist automatically. That is why you see when your country is playing maybe a soccer match with another country, you tend to support your country because of African nationalism. A good example. When Uganda is playing with Nigeria in a soccer match, a Ugandan is likely to support Uganda. It's natural because of the feeling of African nationalism. A Nigerian is likely to support Nigeria because of the feelings of African nationalism. You tend to feel loyal, you tend to support the sovereignty of your own country. For example, per se, if one says that South Africa is the richest country in Africa, per se, the South African will feel attached to their country because of this feeling. I'm a South African, it's the richest country. Wow. So African nationalism is that feeling you have, the loyalty you have, the sovereignty you have to belong to a particular country, and you are willing to fight for its sovereignty. So some of the characteristics of African nationalism are these. So African nationalism is primarily anti-colonial, okay? It does not deal with colonialism. It deals with rejection of foreign rule. 1. 2. The African nationalists showed hatred towards colonialism and demanded for independence, okay? They did not want any form of colonialism, socio-economic, political, all those. We shall look at them, don't worry. African nationalism was militant in nature, another one. Okay, where constitutional means failed, very many nationalists launched wars of liberation. For example, the Pajik by Amilcar Cabral in the Central African Republic, the Frelimo of Samora Machel, Eduardo Mondlane Chivambo in Mozambique, the FOM of Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt, the FLN of Algeria, Ahmed Ben Bella and Colonel Boumediene, the FLNA, okay, remember all those were committed to get independence and were carried out between the 1950s and the 1970s. Another one, it was characterized by ideas of personality. There was a personal character, a clandestinic character in all these revolutions or in all these struggles. We looked at Gamal Abdel Nasser, Egypt, Eduardo Mondlane Chivambo, that is Mozambique, and Samora Machel, Mozambique. We looked at people like Kenneth Kaunda, that is Zambia. We looked at people like Muhammad Naguib, that is also Egypt. We looked at people like Julius Nyerere Mwalimu, that is Tanzania. We looked at people like Jomo Kenyatta, that is Kenya. So all these people, there was a character that spearheaded the struggle for independence. Sam Nujoma, Namibia, Serpo. So there was a character that spearheaded the struggle. Is it okay? So another one, it was meant to restore African dignity. Remember, the whites had dehumanized the black race. So the nationalistic character, there was an element of restoring the image of the black man. Another one, African nationalism was characterized by great love for the continent and the rest. The nationalists loved their countries to the extreme. Some of them even had to sacrifice their lives. Some of them had to sacrifice their families, their humanness, okay? Because they agreed to get dehumanized, public flogging, okay? They were dragged naked into courts, camps. For example, Jomo Kenyatta, Paul Ngei, Fred Kobai were dragged into camps during the Mau Mau revolution. So all these were primarily there. The nationalists in Algeria were put into camps. So another one, there was an element of urbanization after the Second World War. Very many people came to urban centers to seek for employment. What did they find? They found poor living conditions. And the youth in Africa started saying that the whites were responsible for all these misfortunes, for all these problems. So they started getting vices in order to survive: theft, prostitution, and others. All these were blamed on the white man that had failed to grant Africans independence. So African nationalists also had an element of elites and landmen. For example, we shall see that very many landmen got education from missionary schools. Missionary schools provided a foundation of African nationalism. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, okay, was an elite. Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, he was a lawyer, okay, got a law degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Paul Milton Obote of Uganda, all these were landmen. Dr. Nandi Azikiwe, a celebrated writer. Agostino Neto of Angola, a celebrated man. So all these people had an element of learning from missionary education. So it was also associated with socialism. Okay, colonial rule was mainly capitalistic in nature. Okay, so Socialism